Hello, Karma Crew members. Welcome back, and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today is what you guys have been waiting for. We're going to have a chat about Rick. Now, before we get too far into this one, I do want to state that I'm not going to give away too many identifying details about where I worked. I'm not going to give away any identifying details about Rick either, so don't go trying to find him. It's not worth your time. Trust me on that one. I guess we can start out with the day I first met Rick. I walked into his store and put in a resume, and I was told that I could come back on another day and spend 3 hours in the store unpaid to watch how things went to see just if I wanted to be in that job or not. Now, I'm not sure how typical the 3-hour observation thing is, but this was about 10 years ago, so it's not too relevant to today. So yeah, I did the observation, said I'd love to work there, and there were 2 other employees there who were wonderful people. Middle-aged guys who were quite a bit older than me at the time, and they were just great people. They still are to this day. So right away, the other 2 people who worked there warned me that Rick was a bit of a mama's boy, didn't have any friends, and his work was basically all he had. So the first little while in that store wasn't really all that bad. I was hired on as a delivery guy, so I was spending most of the time out of the store away from Rick, except for the occasional time when he would come out on a delivery, and that's when I started learning that everything had to be done his way, and there were no exceptions to this rule. The first time Rick absolutely lost his shit on me though was in the back room of the store. I had a job of cleaning some items that had come back from a customer because they were absolutely disgusting, and I suggested the order that I thought they should be in, and he flipped the F out. He said, "No, you're gonna do it this way because this is the way that I want it done and I'm the manager and you do what I say." By the way, that voice I just did right there, which I use for most of my Karen stories on here, is modeled after him when he was pissy, which was most of the time. So needless to say, me, the guy who had cleaned a whole bunch of stuff in the back room by this point and knew the order that they should be done for the best efficiency, well, I did it in the order that he wanted, and it took about 1.5 times what it would have if I did it the way I wanted to. But I'm not the manager, he is, so I do what he says, right? Now, for some more context on Rick himself, he worked for this company for well over 20 years by the time that I started working for this company. When he started working for the company, he was under a store manager who later became the regional manager. And when I started there, that regional manager was still there, and Rick was a store manager under him. So these guys had been buddy-buddy for well over 20 years. That meant that because they were so buddy-buddy and they went out for lunch and all that stuff whenever the regional manager was in town, I felt like I couldn't go to that regional manager with any problems I had with Rick himself. So that kind of sucked. But while that relationship was buddy-buddy between the 2 of them, what the regional manager didn't know was that Rick was hiding things from him whenever he came into the store. And we had to help him do it. Otherwise, we would get in trouble. So I'm literally talking about this guy making sales on customers' accounts for an item and then taking that item and hiding it inside another item in the store so that the regional wouldn't see it when he was there. He would just see that a bunch of sales were done, numbers were good, and everything was just hunky-dory in the store. Meanwhile, there's probably 7 or 8, sometimes even up to 15 items sitting inside a dresser or something else in the store that are supposedly out with customers and have been charged to their accounts. So we're talking full-on fraud here. Over the next few days, once the regional was out of the store, he would return the items back to the store inventory, take them off of the customer's accounts, and credit back the customer's accounts. Yeah. Falsifying sales for his store to make it look better when the regional came down was a normal thing in this store. But now let's talk about a different kind of fraud, which is time theft. The amount of times that I had to do something for Rick that had nothing to do with the business, I don't think I can even count that high if I take off my socks and use my hands and my feet. So we had to use the company truck to go to Rick's house and pick up a whole bunch of branches and go drop them off at a yard waste place. There were many other trips for purposes like this, going to Rick's house, going to his mother's house, picking things up, dropping them off somewhere else. I also assembled Rick's barbecue in the back of the store and delivered it to his house using the company truck. There are so many hours that just can't be accounted for doing actual store work because we were out doing things for him. So yeah, this was a lot to put up with already, but now let's talk about scheduling. So I was a delivery person, and sometimes that meant that I would be out of the store past the closing time of the store, and whoever was closing the store had to stay there and wait for me to return. But did I ever get a smidgen of overtime? That would be an absolute no. He would say, oh, well, you can leave early tomorrow to make up for those hours, and maybe leave an hour early the next day as well, and make up for some more hours then. But of course, tomorrow or the next day, we would be stuck on another delivery, out of the store longer, and we would just never see those hours. He completely fixed the schedule so that it looked like it was perfect every time, and I don't even want to think about how many hours I got screwed out of. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking that I really didn't have a backbone when I was working there because I didn't stand up to Rick. And, well, I didn't. I was the young guy in the store. Everybody else who worked there at that time was at least 10 to 15 years older than me, and I just didn't feel like I had a say. I needed the paycheck, so I kept my mouth shut. We get a lot of those stories on this channel where people do the work and put up with the bullshit because they need the paycheck. So I completely understand where some of those stories come from. So yeah, I put up with Rick for 3 years in that store, doing exactly what he wanted whenever he wanted, not getting paid for extra time, doing heavy deliveries in scorching heat, and just not being in overall good health because of it. So now let's get to what was the downfall of this store for me and my departure eventually from this store. First, one of the middle-aged guys decided they were going to move on to another job. They found something that paid a lot better, and so they decided to leave. We hired on a new person, and we're just going to call them B. Now, B became the delivery person, and I became a collections person. That didn't mean I wasn't still doing deliveries because I was the second person on all of the heavy deliveries. So, still out there in the heat, still hoofing that stuff around, still being bossed around by Rick 5 days a week. Now, something I realized after B started at the store was that Rick really took a liking to the new shiny people when they joined the store, and the other people that worked there didn't matter as much. In this case, B came in, B was a big gamer, Rick was a big gamer, they had a lot to talk about. I really wasn't a gamer, so I wasn't in most of their conversations because I couldn't relate to them at all. Maybe that's kind of on me, but there was no attempt there made to bring me into conversations either, and when I tried, they'd just keep on talking about things that they related to each other. Now, the most horrible incident that ever happened at this store was an internal thing in the back room where customers couldn't see. I came in one day and noticed there was a sign in the back room that looked like it was a countdown to Christmas. But when you looked at it closer, it said such and such days until Ritmas, Ritmas. And when I asked B about it, he said, ha 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 ha, you know this customer that has the lisp? Yeah, that's the way he says Christmas. Now, spineless me didn't say anything about this sign being up in the back to any of the higher-ups above Rick because I felt like it would come right back on me and I wouldn't have a job anymore, and I really needed that paycheck. But that sign, it stayed up in the back room for at least 20 days leading up to Christmas of that year. Rick didn't care about it. Rick thought it was funny. Rick didn't take it down. So a little bit after that, the other middle-aged guy that was working there got a job somewhere else, getting much better money again, and getting out from under the thumb of Rick, which we all wanted to do at this point. So Rick ended up hiring on a woman who had worked at another one of the stores for this company in another town that had recently closed, and she had been without a job. So she showed up at the store. And I hate to be vulgar with this, but as soon as there were boobs in the store, neither of the guys that were there mattered anymore. It's no exaggeration when I say that he would have kissed her feet after she had walked through pig shit. She got absolutely everything she wanted in that store. She would get the schedule that she wanted with every day off that she wanted. And when we tried to put in a request for a day off, it would get denied because she had already booked it off. So yeah, we're in a toxic work environment with a boss who has big fish in a little pond syndrome, doesn't even let you think while you're there, have to do everything his way. He plays favorites with the employees, and I was basically on the outs. I was persona non grata, and I decided at that point that I kinda had to go. So after 3 or 4 days of doing deliveries out in 35 degrees Celsius or whatever it was boiling and horrible, I just decided I was done. I walked in, I said, it's been real, and I walked out the door. There's no revenge here, there's no malicious compliance or anything like that, just a giant dick named Rick that I put up with for about 3 years when I definitely shouldn't have been there that long, taking that much crap. So now when I'm going through these pro-revenge stories and reading malicious compliance stories, and there are crappy managers in there, because of all the bad crap that Rick did over the 3 years that I was there, they all pretty much remind me of him. So does he live rent-free in my head? Well, yeah, but only when I'm reading stories on Reddit and recording them for you guys, because when I stop recording and walk away from the computer, I don't think about any of that stuff anymore. I've got a wood turning business going on here, I've got a 3D printing business, I've got YouTube, I've got a family of 5, I've got aging parents to worry about, and just so many things on my plate that Rick really doesn't occupy a place in my mind anytime that I'm away from Reddit stories. I just really like relating some of those stories to my experiences with Rick because I think every good channel on YouTube needs a kind of nemesis. So I'm going to continue to relate these stories that we hear to my experience with Rick so that you have a nemesis on the channel. And maybe with some of these stories, you'll look at your own bosses and realize that they're treating you like crap as well, and hopefully you'll learn how to deal with them, not just take it in stride like I did. One other thing that Rick did give us though was our tagline, and I think we'll just use that to end off this one right here. Screw you, Rick. Screw you very much.